Konnichiwa, Nihon Cricket Pod Yokoso. Welcome to the Japan Cricket Podcast. I am your long-suffering host, Alan Kerr, and with me is my podcasting pal, Todd Luckhurst, over in Melbourne. How are you, Toddy?
I'm good, Alan. You look well and back from a nice trip to Namibia.
Yep, I am back in Japan. In fact, I'm actually at Haneda Airport right now. I haven't just got back to Japan. I've been back a couple of weeks. I've just coming back here on a day off or a half day off to meet my sister who flies in today, which is nice. Her first visit. I've only been over here 12 years. She's finally turned husband. But yeah, the arrivals hall at Haneda Terminal 3, perhaps not the best podcasting venue. So I apologize for any background noise or any distractions that I might have over the course of the next however long this pod is. You look like you're sat at home, Toddy, and your dog's eating your curtains being you.
Yes, the dog is eating the curtain, so if you see me turn around, it's to try and get her to stop eating the curtain. So I am listening and I will be engaging, but she's a terror. She's 4 months old and she's interesting. Let's put it that way.
Ruining your house. Standard puppy behavior. Um, yeah, mate. So I was just saying before we came on that I actually did the rare practice of going back and listening to our previous pod where we rather foolishly promised another podcast before the end of the World Cup, which we didn't manage to do. Not only is the group stage is finished, the whole tournament's done now, but we are here at least to wrap up the final three Japan games and talk everyone through what happened and give a few little sneaky insights to what was going on behind the scenes. Yeah, it was a fun 3 weeks in Namibia. I think I should probably start by just giving props to Cricket Namibia for the work that they've done. The facility over there. I think I mentioned it on the last pod about how we really felt like we were at a World Cup once we started playing at the main ground. And that feeling definitely stayed with us all the way through. And there were every game we played, there were people there watching. I think the support that the local public gave the Under-19 World Cup, even though Namibia weren't participating in it, was pretty impressive. People, certainly for our last game against Tanzania, we were over on ground two, and there actually wasn't a game on ground one. They were obviously resting the pitch, but it was pretty sure it was a Saturday that game, and there were a ton of people in there, and there were people in the beers from 10 a.m. The barbecues were going, and yeah, it certainly looked like a genuine community hub where people go and hang out on the weekends, and if there's cricket on, they'll come and watch it. And that really strikes me as a cricket loving population. So, that's definitely something we want to try and get going at the SICG to have, um, the venue being a place that people just come and hang out. If there's cricket on, more the better. And even if there's not, they can drink some beers and have a barbie. So yeah, it was cool. I think cricket maybe did a really good job.
How did it compare to South Africa? Very, guessing, similar part of the world and all that. Was it totally different or?
It's I'm glad you asked that because I spent the whole 3 weeks I was there probably boring everyone to tears with comments like, "Oh, 6 years ago in South Africa it was like this. 6 years ago in South Africa it was like that." I did find myself harking back to our previous World Cup experience probably more than I initially intended, but it was really different. I mean, in South Africa we moved around a lot. I reckon we played in 4 or 5 different venues. We played the one game against India, which was televised. That was at a proper stadium. Um, but aside from that, the rest of our games were all our two warm-up games were probably the next best venues that we played at in Joburg. They were nice, proper cricket grounds. But the rest of the games that we played, even against England in the first match outside of the group stages, we just played the sort of university grounds where there wasn't really, certainly by the end when we played Canada and Nigeria, it was like basic SICG, which had tents to change in, and a lot of time spent long bus journeys. Like to go to India, it was to go for the India game. It was a 5 hour bus ride, which we did twice in the space of 4 days after this. Whereas this time, we stayed in the same hotel the whole time for 3 weeks. Now, that obviously has different challenges, and you do get a bit bored, a bit stir crazy. The menu gets a bit tired, eating the same food all the time. It's I know it's a bit churlish to complain about it, staying in a 5-star hotel and eating all these nice meals every night. But after 3 weeks, 3 and a bit weeks, you do start wanting something different. And the challenge we had was that where the hotel was, there was nothing, there wasn't even a shop that you could walk to. So if you wanted a can of Coke, you were paying, hotel 5-star hotel prices for that. So that was a bit frustrating, the lack of freedom. It would have been nice if we were staying in town. But aside from that, no, I think it compared very, very well. And I guess the other thing was around the amount of exposure we got. Like I said, 6 years ago, we had one game that was televised, which was the India game. We were bowled out for 40 of them, and they knocked it over pretty quickly. So it wasn't the longest game. Whereas this time around, we played 4 matches during the World Cup, and they're all televised. And Ian Bishop's there commentating on the final game when we're playing against Tanzania. In a 13th, 14th place playoff. So, that was pretty cool to have that kind of exposure and the amount of eyes on the tournament. The ICC, until recently, until Oman, we really struggled to get the ICC to collaborate with us on any digital projects that we did. And then they did a few in Oman. I think that was largely thanks to Daniel Beswick, friend of the pod, friend of Japan Cricket. But actually, this time around, they collaborated with us loads. So I think we had over the course of the tournament 7 videos on Instagram that hit over 1 million views. Some of those are 8, 9, 10 million views. And all bar one of those were collaborations with ICC. So that shows sort of the reach that they have. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was very good. It's great to be, back in Australia or everyone listening in Japan, being able to watch all the games. It was a bit of a friendly time zone too. It wasn't too bad. So it was great that the ICC did expand their coverage and everyone could watch the games and watch the replays if you couldn't catch the games, and everything's on YouTube too. So it's fantastic.
That
We
actually
might jump
leads
in.
me that actually leads me nicely into where we're going next, because obviously the last time we spoke was just after we played Sri Lanka, and the next game was Australia. And I actually got messages from quite a few people saying that the Australia Japan game in the 19 World Cup was on primetime TV in Australia. So like on some of I don't know what channels it was on, but a lot of people were watching it. On there. Again, I think that was a weekend game, or it might have been a Monday. I'm not sure, but yeah, loads of people watching it in Australia, which is cool. That the game was that accessible for people.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And as we say with the ICC expanding, I think it was on Amazon Prime. So
Was it?
everyone's available to watch, which is good all around the world. So it's fantastic. We're going to jump into the next game, which we hadn't covered, which is the Japan Australia game. So Japan batted first. Japan got 201 for 8 off their 50 overs. We'll run through the scorecard. Nihar Palmer 33, Nikhil Pol 0. Hugo Tani Kelly, that man again did well. 79 not out, 135 balls. Charlie Harahins 24, Kaz 0, Kosei 1, Taylor Wall 1, Monty Harahins 29 off 51, Gabby Harahins 0, and Chahaya Sekene got 4. But once again, it was Hugo Tani Kelly getting the runs.
Yeah, a few things to come out of this game. I know you love a stat, Todd, so I don't know how accurate these stats will be, but I've seen them popping up on social media. So that's the first time an associate nation's ever made 200 against Australia at an 19 World Cup, I think. Oh no, sorry, that's not right. It's the third time an associate nation has made 200 against Australia at the World Cup. But Hugo's 79 not out is the highest score by an associate player against Australia at an 19 World Cup. So that's pretty cool. I have to say that I have to put my hands up. I was very we talked about this afterwards, myself and the coaches, that going into that game, given that Hugo had made 100 not out, I was nailed on that he was going to get a duck that game, because you know how it is. You go in feeling $1 million, and you just nick one first ball. So for him to guts it out again the way that he did, again he was in super early. I think Nihar faced the first over that game, if I'm not mistaken. So Nikhil at least got to spend a little bit of time in the middle before he was back in the hutch again. So for Hugo to be straight back out there, and again batting 49, 48 and a half overs, whatever it was, It is a great effort. It was really like he just picked up great effort. Um, and I think he was helped by the fact that it was the only time we had 2 days between games. So he'd been able to get a bit of recovery in following that mammoth effort against Sri Lanka, where he was on the field for all bar 2 balls of the game. Um, so 99.4 overs, a lot of time to spend out in the African heat. Um, but we had a pretty relaxed day the following day after the Sri Lankan game. We did have a training session. Hugo was given the option to stay back at the hotel, but he went to training. He didn't train. I think he was taking a few photos. And then the day before the game, we went to Nankuse Wildlife Park. So that was pretty cool. Went on a bit of a safari, saw some animals. And that was pretty exciting for the boys, just a change of scene. Like I said, getting out of the hotel was a challenge sometimes. So to go somewhere like that, none of the boys had done that kind of thing before. So that was pretty good fun. And I think that helped just freshen everyone up for the game. And we won the toss and chose to bat this time, so it's a different approach from the Sri Lanka game. I think we felt that following on from Hugo's effort against Sri Lanka, the batting had enough there to be able to fight hard and to you never quite know in these games. I feel like the best chance of us winning a game was to make a score and hope the team falls over. Um, Against Sri Lanka, perhaps we were a bit more cautious and we decided to bowl first to try and sort of see what we could see how we measured up, particularly after our not great batting performances in the warm-up games. We were perhaps a little bit on the defensive, and we're more focused on batting out 50 overs. But against Australia, I think we took the positive option, decided to bat first and put some runs on. And look, I mean, 200's not a winning score in a 50 over game of cricket very often. But I think when you look at the two teams, Japan in the second ever World Cup and against the defending champions, to bat the overs and to have a guy make 70, 80 odd, and just make Australia work for it a little bit was nice. Like it's good to be able to keep them out there for the full 50 overs. Again, we spoke in the last pod about trying to be hard to beat, and I think that although Australia won the game by, what did they win the game by? We took a few wickets in that game, didn't we?
Won by 8 wickets, 2 wickets.
They won by 8 wickets. So yeah, I think the fact that we at least landed a couple of hits on them and made them work for it was good. An 8 wicket defeat is no embarrassment with that, no shame in that. I think the guys really did put up a good fight, and this Australian team are pretty handy. They were a whisker away from making the final, and they were always going to be a good side. So yeah, I was really impressed with the way the guys went about it. For Hugo again to be there, and the way that Monty stuck around again. I think we talked in the Sri Lanka game. There were a couple of 50 partnerships that we had, and we managed that again. So again, you look. We talked a lot when we were out there about what does a win look like when you're playing these big teams. Against Sri Lanka, that win was Hugo getting his 100. Against Australia, it was the team, not just batting the overs, but making 200. And again, I think I mentioned in the last pod that our highest score against a full member prior to this tournament was 130 odd. We made 180 against Sri Lanka, we then made 200 against Australia. So it was just incremental improvements. A few more people chipping in. It was really great for Monty to come back into the team and guts it out. I don't think he hit a boundary in his, what did he make, 29, you said? 29 off 55 balls or something. So for him to come out and in his first game of the tournament to fight like he did and support Hugo the way that he did was pretty cool. And yeah, I think getting to 200, all the boys felt, job done, but like it was something to take away from the game. Obviously, we did then have to deal with Will Malachuk going pretty hard in the run chase, but ultimately, I think we walked away from that game pretty positive about how it went.
Yeah, we spoke about partnerships last time, as you just mentioned, and second wicket, 58 runs, third wicket, 44, and then for the seventh wicket, 72. So definitely good signs with the bat and very good performance to get 200 against Australia, especially not getting bowled out too. I think it was a great effort. And as you said, with the ball, Will Melichek got 102 or 55. He just showed how good he is and just pummeled the ball everywhere, didn't he? But they got the runs in the 30th over, but I thought that it was still a good effort with the ball. And Looking at the bowling, Charlie Harry got one wicket and Nihal Palmer got the other. So I
Yeah,
thought it
it
was
was
a
one of
pretty good
those.
effort by the boys.
It was one of those that Malachuk hit his first two balls four, and then again I turned around to Duncan. I was sat next to Duncan for most of the games, and I just thought, oh, we could do with him sending one up the chimney here. And, I reckon it was, I can't remember if it was the final ball of the over. Um, and I think it went for six in the end over mid wicket, but he did top edge it a little bit. And for a moment, it looked like it was going to carry. I think it was Charlie Harrington's coming round and kind of throwing himself on it, nearly got to it. You just think, oh, if that, if he's just that little bit less on it, if that catch gets taken, I mean, it wasn't a drop chance. Charlie was never going to catch it. But for a moment, it looked like we might have him. An early wicket again. Like I said, our best chance of winning these games is having it some kind of score on the board, and then you grab a couple of early wickets because maybe they're a bit complacent. But the way Malachuk batted, just the game was over pretty fast. But the fact that we got him did slow things down a bit. And yeah, played him 30 overs. Yeah, I think it's something proud of there.
Yeah, definitely. We'll move on to the next game. So next game was against Ireland, Alan. So Japan batting first again. Posted a good score, 247 for 9. So we'll go through the scorecard. Hugo 20, Niha 24, Nikhil 2, Charlie Harahins 57 off 70 balls, batted fantastic. Monty Harahins 8, Kaz got 24, Tim Moore got 0. Skylar Cook did well, got 30 of 37. Gabby Harahins came at the end and whacked him around. He got 44 of 29. And Ruki Ozeki 11 and Kai Wall got 1. Thought an overall good batting performance.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, that one. So there were a few changes. You mentioned like Nikhil, obviously he'd got two ducks at that point. And I think we just decided to take him out the firing line. He was carrying quite a heavy burden. He'd opened the batting and the bowling in the previous game. We just felt that he probably needed a bit of a breather to come in a little bit lower down. And the way that Hugo was batting, it just made sense to get him in straight away. Hugo played a little bit differently in this game. He went out and actually attacked. He was, the way I've seen him bat a lot up until this tournament. During this tournament, I felt he'd been quite reserved in the way that he was batting. Survival and looking to try and hit bad balls, but he wasn't throwing his hands at it in the way that perhaps he has done before. But this time round, I think he was feeling a bit more cocky. He wanted to coming in, opening the batting rather than one down. He was quite a lot more expansive. I think he hit three or four boundaries early, but then eventually he couldn't have to got himself out. Which did at least mean he had an average. So suddenly he was averaging 200 for the tournament, which is where he finished. So highest average of the tournament itself, and the second highest average of any under 19 World Cup player at the moment. Does Hugo Tanny Kelly sits second on that list, which is pretty cool. But yeah, Nihal looked good again. Nihal, I felt for him a little bit in that he looked good in every innings, but just wasn't quite able to kick on and get the score that he wanted or that he probably deserved. But yeah, Charlie again looked good. Nice for him to make those runs because he'd made a few against Australia and it hadn't quite come off for him. But in this game, was able to click on. And then when he got out, it did look like we were in a bit of strife. I reckon we were 170 for 7 or 8, maybe. But then those last 10 overs, I think we got 79 for 2 off the last 10 overs. Gabby and Skylar batting together. That was some of the most fun I've had watching Japan for ages. I think I talked a bit about Gabby on the last pod, the way that he went about things to help Hugo get to his 100 against Sri Lanka. And the way he batted on this game was just hilarious. I mean, he walked back in after he was out. He's annoyed he's got out. He's an angry little badder. As soon as he gets out, he's just angry. And I just said to him, mate, like that looked like a lot of fun out there. He's like, oh, yeah, it was. And he said, I couldn't believe they just kept bowling exactly where I wanted it. Because he just kept playing the same shot over and over again. But it was fantastic. And, Skylar managed to pull one um, over long leg for 6, and Ray was standing there. I was like, I didn't even know you had that shot. So, I think it was surprising for the coaches in part, but to push up to the verge of 250. When the guys went off at the 50 overs, Ireland looked really unhappy. They were not enjoying the way that finished. And I think they thought they came into the game expecting a relatively easy contest, and instead they got into a bit of a fight. So, um, you know, I think that again, being hard to beat, we certainly made them work for it in the chase. But having those runs on the board, and it was really nice to see other guys stepping up. There had been a bit of talk that Hugo was kind of the one that we were relying on, and when the guy scored 100 not out and 80 not out, and yeah, he does sort of take all the headlines. But for Charlie, Nihar, Monty, Gabby, all getting runs, Skyler getting runs, just a bit more of a team effort this time, which was pleasing.
Yeah, it definitely was a great effort by everyone chipping in, and as you said, it was good that everyone got involved and weren't just tarnished as a side of one batsman. So I thought that was good. I will have a look at the bowling. So Japan made 247 for 9, and Ireland got the runs at the 48th over, 251 for 6. Look at the bowling figures. Kaz 2 for 42. Timmy Moore 2 for 30. Nikhil Pal 1 for 43, and Charlie Harrahins 1 for 45. Good bowling effort. Take it deep, and I thought it was another great effort by the boys.
Yeah, Kaz bowled beautifully. Actually, it was best he bowled. Nice for him to finally get some reward as well because he hadn't had that up to that point. I think that even up to the point of getting his first wicket, because again we dropped a couple of catches. I forget the name of the opener, the left-hander who made 70 odd for Ireland.
Ogilvy.
Yeah, Ogilvy. Yeah, we dropped him early behind the stumps, which was yeah. There was one that I think we dropped him twice, but the first one, yeah, was a painful one to cop because we know that he's their best player, and so that was pretty frustrating. And again, like it was interesting. Like again, it was a terrific effort. They're a full member country, and they took to, they only had 12 balls left to pass our score. So we were not far away at all from knocking them over. And if we'd beaten them, I reckon that would have been. I mean, I don't know the history of the Under-19 World Cup as well as maybe I should, but I reckon that would have been the biggest upset it's ever had. Like associates don't beat full members very often. I mean, yeah, sure, Ireland is still a relatively new full member, but they're still, a well-resourced country who would have had every expectation of making it through the Super Sixes. So, like, the boys were a bit down after that result. I think they all knew it was the game that was our chance, that we needed to play our best. And I think they all felt that maybe it was a chance gone begging. But certainly from a coaching point of view, I think all of us were really hard at going. So to get that close, pushing that hard was fantastic. Like if you'd said to us going into this tournament that our 3 games against full members, we'd bat 50 overs in all of them, we'd have bitten your hand off of that for sure. Given we didn't manage to bat 50 overs in any of the 6 games at the last World Cup. I don't think we even got close. So, that whole thing around continuous improvement was very, very evident. And actually, that's really been the theme of the messages I've had since we got back and when we were over there. People who were watching and following the scores from around the world or sort of getting in touch and saying, oh, it's been so great to see the boys improve game on game and to see the progress that Japan Cricket's making. So that's been really satisfying. It's been sort of a real source of pride, I think, actually, just the way that it's being recognised the work that's gone in. So, and the fact that they were getting their rewards. Sure, the rewards don't always come in wins. Like I said before, it's about a little bit what does a win look like. And that for that Ireland game, yeah, sure, winning the game would have been great. Getting 2 more matches would have been fantastic, but to push the team that close, that definitely felt like a win as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, fantastic effort by everyone involved. And as I said, sometimes it's not about winning, it's about measuring success, and very successful, and the improvement into, throughout the tournament was fantastic.
Yeah, it was really cool. Timmy Moore's parents got a lot of airtime from the TV cameras.
They did.
He was taking he missed the Australia game because he was sick. And so he came back in for this one. And to see him bouncing guys out, which was pretty fun. But really pleased for him. He took 5 wickets across the tournament. Had a good showing. So it was nice that it's funny, all the kids' parents who came. So we had the Wadagay family, we had Tim's parents, we had The Nakayama Cooks were there, and we had Kobayashi Doggets were there. So all of those families who were there, their kids were a little bit in and out of the team. They didn't play every game. So it was nice when you had those moments for the boys' parents who were there to be able to celebrate and to be able to see their kid in action was really cool. And it's good on Timmy to pick himself up off of the sick bed and come out and grab a couple of wickets again. It was good. I think that now puts him as possibly Japan's leading wicket taker at the '19 World Cup. I think Nihar ended up with 5 for the tournament as well. So I'll double check that. But yeah, good effort for those boys.
Yeah, fantastic effort. And that'll lead us into the last game. So the last game was sorry, phone rang
Tanzania,
there.
yeah, we ended
Tanzania.
up
So
we ended up exactly where we thought we were going to be. I mean, of course, we all hoped that we'd be able to get past Ireland, but I think going into the tournament, we knew there was a high probability that we'd face Tanzania in this final game. Just like 6 years ago, we kind of knew that it would be Nigeria that we'd face off against come the end of the tournament. And the way that things have panned out, Tanzania had this fantastic warm-up period. They beat us obviously in a game that we covered. We probably didn't talk about the fact that they also managed to beat Ireland in their warm-up game from a ridiculous position. Ireland, they managed to restrict Ireland to 200, 201 or something, however many overs you think about it. So long. And then Tanzania was something like 21 for 6, and then chased it down. So I think for Tanzania, sort of the warm up games were the peak for them, and they then went on to have some pretty tough matches against, let's say, South Africa, Afghanistan, and I guess it must have been the West Indies they played, and they struggled. Their scorecards were very similar to ours from 6 years ago. There was lots, I think they made 100 in one of the games, but there were double figures in 2 of them. And yeah, pretty tough experiences for them. And I think they lost a couple of guys to injury as well. So they were sort of reeling a little bit by the time we came across them again. And our guys were very, very motivated. And it was funny. I can't remember if I mentioned this on the first podcast we did about the World Cup, but we after we'd been bowled out for 45 in that warm-up game, the coaches were standing around in the middle, and it was Kendall who said, "Oh, I still think we'll beat these guys if we play them again." And I was just like, I think Kendall's delusional here. We just got bowled up for 45. Like, how do you reckon that? But fair play to him. He was spot on. I'll let you go through the scorecard, Todd, because it was a pretty resounding victory in the end.
so Tanzania batted first, all out for 131. Have a look at the bowling. So we had Nihar Palmer 4 for 30, Nikhil Pole 3 for 23, Charlie Harrahins 2 for 14, and Kaz Kato Stafford 1 for 22. It was a pretty good start by Tanzania with the bat. They were 2 for 80 odd, and then all of a sudden the boys just pegged it back and bowled them out for 131.
Yeah, I forget what the actual collapse was. I think it was like 7 for 18 or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was
7 for
something like that.
13.
7 for 13, yeah. Yeah, the opening batter, again, we dropped a very straightforward catch when he was on 6 or 7, I think, which should have been taken again off Kaz. And, in some ways, by the time it took about 24 hours, we were all pretty furious about that drop at the time. But when it came round to the next day, I'm actually pretty glad that we did put that chance down and enabled him to go and get some runs. And it would have been a bit rubbish if we'd bowled them out for 50 or 60 and knocked it off without any having to really do much. So the fact that they got up to 130, I mean, yeah, at 80 for 2, I was thinking that they would go on to make 200 plus and we'd have a fight on our hands. But again, I brought it up a couple of times. The way the boys fought back, they stuck to it, and to end up running through them in the way that we did was remarkable. It was just wickets falling constantly. So to wind up only chasing 130 from 80 odd for 2 was it's actually quite reminiscent of our game against England at the last World Cup. We had a fairly similar score in that game. And then the way the boys went and chased it was really pleasing. It was really great. I mean, I guess you can run through the second innings and how that went.
So Japan got the runs in the 29th over, 136 for 1. Nihar Palmer 53 not out. Taylor Wall 47 just missed out in his 50, 90 balls, and Nikhil came in and just smashed a 6 and a 4 and got 12 not out. So Japan won quite convincingly in the 29th over. Great result for Japan. One of my favourite bits of vision of the whole tournament, Alan, is of yourself.
Yeah, I'm
So
there.
win the game, and I see you standing up like a proud father and clapping the boys off. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. It was slightly different setup. We were over on the second ground this time. So in the main ground, the dressing room, you had a dressing room up the stairs. So you were up the top and you could kind of look down from a lofted position down on the field, which was cool. And the coaching staff are usually all up there. But over on the second ground, they don't have that. So everyone's just kind of in together. And I wanted to make sure I've got my table because I've got loads of papers I need to fill out, post-match reports and all that sort of stuff. So I like to grab the table that's there. And yeah, that meant that I was front and center when the game was done. So yeah, a little bit of airtime, I'll take it. But yeah, it was good for. I was really pleased for Taylor because I don't know if we spoke about this. Taylor, um, obviously he batted a long time in that warm-up game against West Indies. He batted his 100 balls for 30 odd and just showed a bit of fight and a bit of guts. But then he'd actually he made those. We came to the Sri Lanka game, and I think he made some runs against Sri Lanka, but he dropped a catch and hurt his hand. And he actually got the run out the next ball to break the 300 run on opening partnership. Um, but he was struggling with his hands. He slid down the order against Australia because of that. He ended up going in at like 6 or 7 and getting a duck, I think, one. And then he didn't play the Ireland game because it was still bothering him. So for him to come back in this game, go back at the top of the order, um, and go out and make a few runs. It was a bad run out, a bad way to finish for him, but not wasn't his fault. Nihal got a bit of stick for that one. Nihal was involved in 2 run outs in the tournament, so an area of the game they work on. Um, but it did mean that Nick Hill got the chance to come in and finish things the way he did. It was great to see him carve one over the point to win the game. He'd had a rough time, Nick Hill, over the course of the tournament, just in terms of performances. I think he's probably a bit frustrated, but he's such a key member of the group, and he stays level. You wouldn't know whether he's performing fantastically or whether he's struggling. So he never let his disappointment show, but I'm sure he would have been frustrated. But so to come out and pick up, I think he got 3 for with the ball in this game, and then just to have the chance to go out and actually field bat on ball and get some World Cup runs was nice. To finish not out was a pretty special moment for him. And yeah, like you win that game by 9 wickets with 20 overs to spare. It's a pretty comprehensive win. And for us, obviously a first ever World Cup win for Japan. It's not luck when you beat a team by that much. So to be able to say that, yeah, we definitely were. I think officially we finished 14th. I don't know quite how they worked it out because you had the USA against Scotland in the other playoff game over in Zimbabwe, and I think USA had a better net run rate than us across the group stage, but our net run rate was better than Scotland and the other teams that finished. We were actually better than Scotland and Zimbabwe on net run rate, I think, from that group. So, I think that's how they've worked it out. I'm not really sure, but I read in the press release that we finished 14th. So, we'll definitely take that. That was one of the goals, was to get a win at the World Cup and to show that Japan cricket is on the rise. And it just, again, it capped that whole continuous improvement thing. And those games came pretty thick and fast in that, like I said, we had Sri Lanka and we had 2 days. Then it was Australia, rest, Ireland, rest, Tanzania, fly out the next day. So the tournament was a long time starting, and then it all kind of ended in a blur. It was a bit of a rush, which is why we haven't got around to doing a podcast until now. Um, there was a bit going on those last few days. Thankfully, I didn't have to change a load of flights. That's the only silver lining of not beating Ireland, was that I didn't have to get into the flight changes. But yeah, so it was a really nice way to finish, and I think all of the boys were left feeling like they'd really achieved something, and that's kind of what you want. I think everyone was really energized. We spoke before about 8 players in the squad eligible to come back in 2 years' time. Of course, there'll be another qualifying campaign, and there'll be another. chance for us to hopefully show that we're the best in the EAP region and then go and represent the region at another World Cup. I don't know where that's going to be. That hasn't been announced yet. So it'll be interesting to see where that is, but hopefully we'll be there once again.
Yeah, great effort by all. Well done to the boys and all the staff too. Like it takes a big effort to it's a big cycle and you get through and you do your qualifications and then there's these camps because it's a long time in between because it's not just you don't qualify then you're in the next month is it like it's long and there's a lot of staff and a lot of people commit who have other jobs and stuff too. So congratulations to everyone involved and just fantastic to get a win and I know how much it means to you and everyone at Japan Cricket and all the boys. So from everyone, congratulations to all and we can't wait for the next World Cup.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It was a nice final evening. Obviously, we won that game. The game was done by 2:30 or so, and we held a barbecue back at the hotel. We invited all the parents who'd been there for us to come along, and we got all the boys, the 6 boys who were aging out, to 7 boys who were aging out. Sorry, to get up and say a few words about their experience, and some were better than others. Kaz spoke really well. He actually choked up at one point, had to sit back down, and then got back up again later. So there's a bit of emotion around, which is really nice. Then you had guys like Nikhil and Timmy who perhaps aren't that natural orators, but I think a word for Kaz, particularly the way that he sort of matured throughout the tournament, the way that he led the group, carried a lot of burden on his shoulders in terms of opening and bowling, batting in the middle order and doing all the media stuff that comes with it as well. It's a new experience for him, and he definitely the very first game, Sri Lanka game, we were walking out for the toss, and I was like, "Oh, how you feeling, mate?" And he's like, "Oh, to be honest, I'm more nervous about the interview after the toss. I don't know what they're going to ask me, and I don't know what I'm going to say in response." I was like, "You'll be okay, mate." And they don't ask you anything too hard. But actually, of course, the thing that they always fall back on is they ask about changes. And I think there was one game where we'd made 4 changes, and he's trying to remember the final name, um, and he's just sort of the guy doing it. He's just like, "Yeah, don't worry about it, mate. We'll figure it out." So I thought that was a bit savage. That reminds me, actually, I do need to give a special mention that we forgot it. You mentioned it on the scorecard, but Ryuki Ozeki, that was another really cool little finish to a game or innings against Ireland in those last 10 overs. And Ryuki's come in at 10 or 11, might come in at 11, I think. And he's finished 11 not out of 7 or 8 balls. And he got bad on ball every ball. He didn't face a dot and he hit 2 boundaries. Finished with a boundary straight down the ground. That was really cool. And Chihaya wasn't playing that game. Chihaya was going absolutely nuts on the sidelines, just properly yelling out in Japanese. Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. So again, those 2 boys both spoke at that final dinner. It was really nice. And there's a bit of momentum now for those boys to carry on to the next tournament. So yeah, fingers crossed. It's another opportunity. There's nothing, can't take anything for granted. You never know what's going to come from the next EIP cycle. Under 19 cricket, there are a lot of you never quite know what you're going to get from one cycle to the next. But we'll be preparing as best we can. And the challenges there's nothing for the boys for the rest of this year. We didn't qualify for the Asia Cup. There's actually nothing in the calendar. So that's something that we're talking about, how we can try and give the boys something. And there's a few ideas of what we can do. Of course, we've got the Futures League and the JPL, and we'll see a few things at that in the spring. But till then, we need to try and come up with some ways to get them together as a group and start preparing that next batch of players, because we don't just want to go and make up the numbers. We want to qualify for the World Cup, and then we want to go to the World Cup and experience this whole thing again. Put on another show and win more than one game. That's always that goal. That keep saying it. That continuous improvement is all part of it. So yeah, credit to the coaching staff. I think Rayo did a really good job. It's really interesting for me seeing Rayo giving his team talks and doing his stuff there. He was quite a quiet bloke, but actually amongst the group, they clearly all respect him a lot, and it was good to see how he's growing into that role as well, and he'll be better for the experience too. It's not just the players who learn from these, the coaching staff. So, yeah, hopefully we can take that forward.
Yeah, hopefully you can get some games in. As you said, it's a bit hard and there's not much around, but hopefully the momentum can keep going and boys can play some games together leading into the next cycle. quickly we could touch on, I believe there's a men's tournament coming up, but I think it's been announced. I hope it has.
We haven't actually announced it on our socials, but it has been announced elsewhere. Yes, the men are off to Thailand in about 10 days, 11 days. And we're off to Thailand to play against Bahrain, Thailand, and Bhutan, ending up being the fourth team coming into that tournament. So just a little quad series. We'll play all of those teams once, and then there'll be a final at the playoff. So be good to come up against them. Bahrain are a team that are ranked sort of around about the same as Q8. So they'll be coming in as strong favourites. But we managed to knock over Q8 back in October, so we'll be hoping to try and put our best foot forward in that game. And Thailand, of course, beat us in Sano in the final of the Tri Series last May. So we owe them one. And I don't think we've ever played Bhutan before, so or at least not for a very long time. Certainly not since I've been involved. So not quite sure what to expect from them. They're ranked pretty low, but that squad has been selected and will be announced very soon. A couple of guys not available, so unfortunately, Rare Sankran and Thomas will be missing from that tournament. But otherwise, yeah, it's a pretty strong side that we're sending guys. Loki Yamamoto Lake is the other week visit on the way for this. So, two guys missing. That means a chance for someone else. So, looking forward to that. That'll be matches start 25th of February. So, that will all be hopefully. I'm not receiving any details, but hopefully that will all be on a live stream somewhere. I expect the Cricket Thailand YouTube page. So, I'll make sure we get details about where to watch that as soon as we can, as soon as we have them.
Beautiful. All right, that might do us, I think. Alan's waiting at the airport, so we'll let him go, and I think we'll do another pod, maybe just before the Thailand tournament or during the Thailand tournament. Maybe we can cover a couple games halfway through.
Yeah, I was going to say that the eagle-eyed people might have noticed we're actually still in season 5 of the podcast. I'm not quite sure where one season ends and the next one starts. I had it pegged that we would end it after the World Cup, but I think maybe it'll be it's the start of April has to be the new season, doesn't it? So I guess this one. But then we're going to have a women's tournament as well. The ACC women's tournament is going to be at some point in March. So yeah, it's just the longest season ever. But yes, we will be back at some point and we'll be covering off everything. So thanks again, Toddy. Good to chat. I better go and see if my sister's arrived. She'll be pretty furious with me if she's standing over at the far end of the room, not getting me on my phone. So I should probably go and track her down.
Thanks, everyone.
Let's go some of this stuff.